from Genesis 50:20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. Say it one more time. Way easier than the last one, guys. I know you can do it. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. I'm confident you all can get this one in the 7 weeks that we'll be working on it. So welcome, Rachel. So good to see you tonight. Turn your cell phones off to airplane mode, and here we go. So we're in our 3rd week now in our identity unit. Sometimes I call it the victim unit. We talked about the word victim in our last 2 lessons. We will again tonight. I want to say a little bit more to get into our lessons. The typical context for the word victim is someone who was harmed or killed in a crime, like he was a victim of a robbery or she was a victim of assault. But we need to expand that for the purposes of our class and how we're looking at it in the healing context. So let me repeat a point from last week. Being victimized and living as a victim are 2 different things. It's important we understand this. We have no choice about being victimized. If someone hurts us or abuses us or treats us in a disrespectful manner, we are not responsible for their choice to do that. People offend us all the time, sometimes in small ways like yelling at us or calling us names, but sometimes they offend us in life-altering ways, and that is the case of abuse. Everyone is victimized at some point. We can control this only to a certain extent, and an example of that is the people we choose to hang out with. So we can choose to hang out with people who are kind and respectful, people who want to do their best to live God's way, and that will affect our life in a positive way, minimize being victimized. But for the most part, it's not our fault when someone victimizes us. Choosing to live as a victim is something different. When we choose to live as a victim, we are allowing life's difficult circumstances, there's your blank, difficult circumstances to define who we are. I'll use myself as an example. I was sexually and physically abused in the satanic rituals in a cult involving my grandfather, my father, other cult members. And for a long time, this is how I saw myself. I am Cindy, a survivor of abuse. It became my identity for a time. During my own healing journey, however, praise the Lord, God changed that. And He healed the memories, He healed the emotions, He healed the mental anguish I had from that, what my grandfather and father and the cult did to me. And hear this, when God was finished healing me, I still had been victimized by the cult. The facts of my life still had not changed. However, I had changed. The emotions no longer had control over me. The effect of the abuse on my life is what God changed when He healed me. That's the miracle that He did. My fear was gone. My anxiety was gone. My nightmares were gone. My thoughts of dying were gone. My self-hatred was gone. That's what God did in the miracle process of healing. That gripping pain of betrayal, rejection, and abandonment were gone. God healed me. And at that point, I no longer defined myself as a victim. This is not who I am anymore. I haven't been that person for 25 or 30 years now. Did it still happen? Yes, it did. But today I'm free. I am a valuable daughter of the King. I am a precious human being. I am useful in God's service. I am a good friend to many people. I'm joyful. I'm happy. I'm at peace. I don't live as a victim anymore. I rejected that identity because God healed me. Choosing to live as a victim is a big problem. The victim mentality is a false identity. There's your blank, false. When we have a wrong view of who we are, it has a negative impact on everything in our life. Nothing is spared. A false identity leads the victim to view and treat other people poorly, to view and treat themselves poorly. A false identity results in painful relationships and painful life consequences. If you see yourself as a victim, you define yourself as a bad person or a worthless person or an unlovable person. And by the way, there is no such thing as a bad person, worthless person, or unlovable person. But you see yourself that way, and then you make life decisions that fulfill that. But if you reject the victim mentality and choose to see yourself truthfully as someone of great worth, whose essence is good, someone who is worthy of love, then the opposite is true. You will have healthy relationships. You will make good decisions that lead to a satisfying life, and the key is your identity. So let's look at some people here who started out as victims. Their stories are found in Psalm 107. If you want to open your Bibles to Book of Psalms, chapter 107, we will find those passages. All right, after you get your psalm located, I want you to look at the diagram in your book. And I enlarged it. This is the same one in your book, so you can see it a little bit easier. But I want you to look at that right now. And you'll recognize our familiar diagram of temptation crossroads here. But you're also going to see some new things on this drawing. Lots of things bring us to the crossroads. You can see the words anger, fear, loss, changes in circumstances, pain, needs, and desires. You can also see the question we always have to answer when we come to the crossroads. Who is going to run my show? God or me? You can also see a reminder from Unit 1 about the filters that help us choose Trust Trail, God's way. Truth and healing help us head in God's direction, which leads to the promised land. False beliefs and unhealed wounds try to push us toward Pride Pathway, which is my way, our way, the way that leads to Egypt, our metaphor for destruction and disappointment. But you can see something new here on this drawing. You can see three fingers called the desert, sea, and prison. Let's see how they fit in with our lesson tonight. I'm going to start reading in Psalm 107 in verse 4. Some wandered in desert wastelands, finding no way to a city where they could settle. They were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. They cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He led them by a straight way to a city where they could settle. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind, for he satisfies the thirsty and fills the hungry with good things. So there are a lot of ways to act like a victim, and wandering, there's your blank, wandering in the desert is a metaphor for one of these ways. I want to talk about our needs briefly. God created every human being with needs. No person is independent. We fancy ourselves as independent, not needing anyone, but we're not. That's the truth of the matter. Obviously, everyone needs air and water and food and shelter and so forth. But God also created us with emotional needs. Here's the list you've been working with on your victim worksheet this week. Acceptance, significance, security, love, nurture, affirmation, respect, appreciation, rest, satisfaction, peace, freedom, and a true provider, protector, or source of power. Those are needs, a general list, not an exhaustive list, but that'll give you an idea. What am I talking about when I'm talking about your needs, your emotional needs? That's a good indicator right there. Whether we are a girl or a guy, whether we're young, old, black, brown, white, rich, poor, we all have the same list of needs. Every single human being does, because that's how God designed it. It's God's plan that those needs be met by Him, but also by other people, like our parents, other significant adults in your life, also by school, church, friends, other arenas where you may find yourself. So your blank there is needs. Even at your age, though, you are well aware of the fact that your needs have not been met very well in certain relationships. Unfortunately, that's the nature of this world. And that's when problems begin, when our needs are not met. If our needs are not met, it creates a wound in us. And God would like to heal these wounds in each of us, as He did for me so many years ago. It is important that you recognize your needs. You need to be in touch with that. And I want you to see them as good and as important. When we are in situations when they are not being met, sometimes we try to minimize our needs or say, I don't deserve to have that, or there must be something wrong with me. Don't want you to think that way. I want you to think truthfully. Your need is good. God created you with those needs, and He wants those needs to be met. When our needs are not met, that's when we do crazy things. That's when we do regretful things that damage our life. In my own life, my father did not meet many of my needs. He was a good financial provider, and that was about it. Because my needs for love and nurture and safety and significance were not being met at all at home, I gravitated to guys to meet my needs, to satisfy my needs. My victim mentality at that time and my unhealed wounds led me to make horrible decisions, twice marrying men who were unhealthy and abusive, because I was an inner train wreck. I needed to learn how to find love, find nurture, find satisfaction in Jesus, and to see myself as He saw me before I could even begin to recognize a good relationship. These things needed to be settled. These matters needed to be sorted out before I ever entered these arenas. Unfortunately, I was 40 before it happened. But you have a chance to do it now before you make 20 years of mistakes, like I did, and so many adults before you have. That's why we're here. Another example might be a young man who joins a gang. Perhaps he never knew his father. Maybe he never received a sense of affirmation or respect or of belonging when he was a child in his home growing up. And so as a teen, he joins a gang trying to get those unmet needs fulfilled. And we can all understand that. He may feel better now because he has a place of belonging, that he's in the gang and he's accepted by that gang. But he's really likely to make some poor choices, ones that could lead to major life consequences, like going to prison. He might even get killed, because that's not a safe place to be. Right? Pathway ends badly. We have to go God's way to find true satisfaction and fulfillment. So back to our desert folks. Why were they wandering around in the desert in the first place? Because they have needs, like all of us. They need a reliable and a sufficient provider. They need satisfaction. They need nurturing. They need belonging. They are looking for a place that will satisfy those needs. Okay, that's all good. That's all God created up to that point. But where did they go to try to get their needs met? To the desert. They went to the desert. The passage said they were in the desert looking for a city. Really? In a desert looking for a city. Does that make any sense? If you're hungry, if you're thirsty, if you need a place to belong, would you head into the desert? Or would you head to a city or a town where you could find the resources that you need, some place where those needs can be met? And this is the consistent mistake of the victim. When they are trying to get their needs met, they make the wrong choice. Why? Because the inner software is wrong. The messages, the beliefs, the thoughts are false. They make choices that are illogical, irrational, and sometimes destructive. And the root of their problem is pride, because they don't trust God to meet their needs. And for that reason, they choose to be their own provider. Their trust is in themselves, not God. They don't think they need God. And that's the definition of pride. But God's the one who created us. God is the one who made our needs. He knows us because he made us, and he loves us. And he is the only one who can consistently meet our needs. He's the only one we can count on every day of our life to always be there for us and to always satisfy those needs. But we have to trust God to find this out. There's the fly in the ointment. We have to trust God to find this out. The victim living in the desert is wandering around, trying to find them something to define themselves, to give their life meaning. And some popular choices of things we choose to give our life meaning include education, career, achievement, money, material things, marriage, family, beauty, sports, and fitness. Is there anything wrong with any of these things? No. These are all good things. All of these things have an appropriate place in our life. However, if we allow any of these things to define us, that's when we begin to get into trouble. If we rely on any of these things to consistently meet our needs, we will end up disappointed. It's only a matter of time. We cannot build our identity around these things, because that would be a false identity. That is not who you are. You are not what you do. You are not how you look. That is not your identity. The victim tries to find satisfaction in these things, but never will. As verse 5 said, they were hungry and thirsty, and their lives ebbed away. The desert life is a wasteland of unfulfilled dreams and expectations. It is an empty experience. Now, in contrast, if we go God's way, go trust His trail, He will meet our needs, as the psalm said, for He satisfies the thirsty, and He fills the hungry with good things. Trusting God leads to a satisfying life. All right, let's do our mid-lesson break here. I'll give you a moment to consider how this might apply to your life. Look at page 250.